Hey, what up YouTube, and welcome back to a new video with Rams Fan YT. In today's video, I'm going to go over the predictions I made at the start of the season. It feels a very long time ago now, doesn't it? I did all the way down from the National League North and South up to the Premier League as I do every season. And we'll see. Some of them may be slightly embarrassing. Some of them were dead on the money. And we're just going to unpack a bit of how the seasons went overall, to be honest. Starting off with 24th, I had Oxford City. In reality, they finished in 19th. I thought originally, transportation, quite a difficult place in terms of distance-wise. They'd been relegated the season before, if you recall, from the National League. And I must say, it has been a bit of a struggle this season. I think that's a fair comment to make. It's certainly looking at times that they didn't quite manage to be ever in the top half, I think. And I know they're slightly better than bottom of the league as I predicted, but also they had Sam Cox as manager at the time. Well, that wasn't who they ended the management with. They brought in Ross Jenkins very early on, relatively speaking. He came back in September. So who would have known where they would have finished if Sam Cox had remained as manager during that entire time? They could well have finished last. But yeah, they stayed up and they'll probably wanting to build on that for next season, certainly. 23rd, Curzon Ashton. Well, they finished just outside the playoffs in 8th on goal difference. It's a very hard team to predict, Curzon Ashton. They tend to be all over the place. And when you're this early on in the season predicting things, it can be quite difficult. You're basing on a very small sample size of pre-season with not many transfers. You don't even know if the management is going to remain the same by the start of the season. In the case of this one, Craig Mahon, that's the fella. He ended up moving on, for example, to Fylde this season. So it's one of them things that actually, no, that was the start of this season coming up. So ignore me. I completely forgot he moved in recently. But yeah, I think Curzon Ashton, well done. Well overperformed my expectations. 22nd, Southport. They actually finished in 18th. I do still think it's a team that is definitely on a trajectory that is not great. Slipping slowly, creeping further and further towards that relegation. I didn't think that Jim Bentley was a good manager. And I think it kind of transpired to be the case. Hence why they have dismissed him during the end of the season. They were safe, but ultimately he was never a right appointment, and they probably shouldn't have stuck with him after such a dismal season one before. It'll be interesting to see where Southport go from now. I think they've appointed Neil Dans as the manager. The guy who I think I spoke about him at one point on the channel as a transfer. But yeah, certainly will be interesting to see where they finish next season. Could be another difficult season potentially. 21st, Rushall Olympic. Well, they finished in 22nd. This is the first one which was I'm going to claim as a decent prediction to make. It wasn't a hard one to make. And the reason it wasn't that hard to make was they're a very small club. They had to do a lot of rebuilding in the off-season to get up to National League North-South standards. They most likely would have been in the National League North regardless, but at that standard of stadium. They also played brand of football which very much wasn't conducive to National League North standard, a bit more hoofball. So yeah, I'm going to claim that what happened transpired to happen. They very much struggled to adjust for their second season. 20th Fast League. Now, bearing in mind when we made the Fast League prediction, we actually finished in 24th, if you didn't know. But before the start of the season, it's one of them ones which they were still playing where they're based in Leeds at the Citadel. They had very great stability on the pitch, from what appeared to be the case. They had a manager called Clayton Donaldson, who I didn't rate as overly high as a manager. I was concerned about that, and it was a questionable appointment. I thought they'd like they usually do, just finish. I think they were for about 3 seasons or something like that. They were just above that relegation zone. But yeah, the move to Buxton really derailed them. They got rid of the manager. They also got rid of several of the main first teamers, and now they've got a load of academy players essentially playing men's football. And now they're going to be playing in Tier 9 next season. I do wish the best for Firstly Celtic. I think it has now officially been bought by David Stockdale, as Wednesday I will know. Just saw him comment. I'll get back to that at the end of the episode. He's the manager anyway, David Stockdale, and he's looking to buy the club. Obviously made a few appearances for Sheffield Wednesday a few seasons back. So yeah, he's interested in buying the club, and hopefully that would place them on a better path than what they have had recently. And I wish all the best to the club and the fan base as they rebuild in the Northern Counties East League. 19th, Leamington. I thought, yeah, Leamington will stay up. They finished in 16th, so slightly higher than I actually predicted, but only by 2 points at the end of the day. The experience at this level, I think, was a key thing which swayed me to think they'd stay up. And they certainly did. So I don't think this is too bad a one. Slightly more comfortable than maybe I let on, but it was certainly a positive one. And much of the same next season, I would imagine. 18th was Scunthorpe. Now, I do occasionally get a bit mad when making predictions, and the Scunthorpe one was one of them. Congratulations on the promotion, of course. The reason I thought this was a lot of egos, they brought in a lot of players at the start of the season, a lot of big name players, and sometimes you can get the case of where you bring in that ego factor, so to speak, from people who think they're too big for that level and don't actually put in the shift. But they did, so they did prove me wrong and finished in second as opposed to 18th. 17th, Kings Lynn. Now, a couple of things to note. They did finish in 6th. But the first thing to note was where they finished the season before last was 18th. And also, I actually thought they were... we didn't really have that many... In terms of signs of recruitment, a lot of them were lower half of the table sort of players. They weren't used to sort of playoff form. But yeah, I mean, I must say Kings Lynn did meet the expectations which were imposed upon them. I think it will certainly be an interesting one next season to see where they emerge to. 16th, Chester. A lot of people backed Chester at the beginning of the season, and I didn't, which was probably naive, as they did finish in 4th in the end. Good setup at the club. A lot of heavy financial backing. That is fair to say. Again, I think it was one of the things that I did think that a bit of overinflated expectations, which wasn't quite. I mean, they didn't reach the title as some people expected, but also they didn't burn and crash like I potentially expected. I didn't really rate Callum McIntyre too highly. I think that's being kind to the fella, and he's obviously done a decent job this season. So yeah, I think we'll see if they continue to build in the right direction. we could see them doing well next season, can't we? 15th, Buxton. Now, I'm going to wager you that no one has said that Buxton will finish in the playoffs. And that is absolutely great for the people of Derbyshire, for the people of that town in Buxton, for everyone who enjoys Buxton mineral spring water, and whatever you have it. It was been a strong season. And to be fair, I should have backed John McGrath a bit stronger. I knew he was a good manager because I remember his time at Mickleover. I just thought, a bit of a step up to the National League North. But no, he did a fantastic job. Certainly no mid-table finish. I don't think that would have been a disgrace if they did finish in 15th, Well, it may have been if they from positions that they had at the beginning of the season, but playoffs it was, and playoffs they deserved. 14th place, Hereford. They finished in 10th. Where do you put 10th? Is it playoff challenging or is it mid-table? It's quite hard to tell with a team which has a league rather which has 7 places in the playoffs, because they're used to mid-table. Hereford. It is one of the things that I just thought they were going to be a bit too inconsistent to make the playoffs, and sort of have that budget and aiming towards mid-table. And I think that was sort of proved to be true. They were 1 point off the playoffs, so we can say they're playoff challengers, if you will. But yeah, far too inconsistent to actually manage to get in there at the end, which I think does sort of bear a bit more weight to what I was saying back in the early season predictions. 13th, South Shields actually finished in 17th. I think it is a very disappointing season for South Shields altogether. It was difficult to say where they'd be, and I think they have severely struggled with the change of ownership. We didn't really quite know where they were at the beginning of the season, and it's been slightly worse than I anticipated. They had lost some key players at the beginning of the season. Blair Adams is a notable one. So yeah, I think certainly was a season of transition, and we'll see where they go from here, because they have slumped down into lower half mid-table. If it weren't for the bottom 4 being so woeful, they could have ended up in a relegation battle. But yeah, I mean, moving forward, they've got to jump back, so to speak. 12th, Marine. This was an interesting one. They did stay up. They finished in 15th, so it's not too badly different. There's only 5 points difference altogether. I thought they'd be more than capable of competing at this level, and they were. Not quite 12th, but it's still mid-table. It's still competitive. So I'll take that as a slight win, because ultimately when you're arranging teams in mid-table, it doesn't matter too much where the ultimate number is they finished. It's mid-table, isn't it? 11th place, Darlington. Well, we got that one dead on the money. They finished in 11th exactly. So that's the first dead-on bullseye, so to speak. I rate Steve Watson highly as a manager, and it sort of proved this season a bit why. I think you if you're a Darlington fan, I think you'd be content with this season. I'd say. What about you? If you're a Darlington fan, let me know in the comment section down below. But I do think, just outside of a chance to get in the playoffs, but much better to be in that position than being stranded at the bottom of the table, needing a miracle to survive. 10th, Brackley Town. Well, I don't think anyone predicted Brackley Town to win the league. If you did, you must have been a Brackley fan, because do not feasibly see that as being much of a prediction, to be fair. I just thought playoff regulars, but it may be a bit of time of a dejection, a bit of a... But no, they used it as a platform to kick on. It does sometimes go that way, Sometimes players get a bit down and don't want to, and they decide to leave for a higher level. Others decide to stick at it and go and actually go a step further, and that's what Brackley have done this season. So congratulations. Looking forward to seeing you in the National League and see, do you actually cope in national football, so to speak. 9th, Spennymoor Town, another one dead on the money. 2 of the northeastern teams, ironically. I did think, you know what, they always pop up at the beginning and the end of the season in good form, but we're all from mid-season. Bit of a difference this season, though. I think they were, I mean, they obviously reached the FA Trophy final, which was something. I think they were very good in the middle chunk of the season, but weren't too great at the beginning or the end. They weren't horrendous at the end, but I think the expectations I put on them during the predictions, for which I did on weekly predictions, may have been a bit of a overstatement. But yeah, I think Spennymoor probably where you'd expect them to be, just outside the playoffs. 8th, Radcliffe. I mean, they had a very good season in the Northern Premier League. They finished in 20th, so they did stay up. I just thought, they scored 103 goals. They made some good acquisitions, I thought. And I thought, you know what? They're going to build on from strength to strength and be just outside the playoffs. Didn't quite transpire that way. It had been a bit of a struggle at times, but they got out of the relegation zone and managed to climb themselves just above that safety, above that dotted line. So yeah, Radcliffe, living to fight in the National League North another day. I just had much higher expectations, so to speak. 7th, Scarborough Athletic finished in 13th. Well, I thought, you know what, Jonathan Greening did a great job. He finished 8th in 2022-23. I thought it would be a bit of a replica of the season. It was not. I think they're slowly sleeping backwards at the moment. Potentially, I don't know if it's going to be all the way back to the Northern Premier League, but they seem to have just floated into mid-table at the moment. It'll be interesting to see what they do next season, because they're playing at Bridlington Town for at least summer part of the season anyway. And that's obviously a smaller ground. So that will be an interesting one to see how they have to adapt to that. Less stands, possibly less fans, and a smaller pitch from what I gather as well. 6th, Peterborough Sports. Well, they actually finished in 12th. There were several times I thought, you know what, Peterborough Sports can reach the playoffs. But yeah, I think in reality, a mid-table finish would have been probably a better prediction for Peterborough Sports. Playoff-wise, never really looked convincing that they would do it. I mean, at times I thought, they've got a few games in hand here. Maybe they might be able to pull a bit of a run together. But yeah, but they never did quite in the end manage that. 5th, Alfreton Town. Alfreton Town, you have had the most disappointing season, I must say. It just seems like every season they went in the playoffs, but they didn't this time. So for whatever reason, they had a slump of this season in mid-table. Maybe that's what they needed as a bit of a wake-up call. I mean, do you change direction of management? It must be said that it has been extremely disappointing for a team that for so long has been up there competing towards the playoffs, but it has not been a good season at all. 4th, Warrington Town. They actually got relegated, so much for me predicting them into the playoffs. I just thought they were settling in nicely. They had a good win percentage, a great deal of pool of fans that they could have drawn upon. With Warrington being quite a good sized town, so to speak. Yeah, I thought they were going to go that extra mile, but then they finished just outside that sort of playoff zone last season. And I thought, you know what, they could definitely take that next step on, but it turned out that they went a bit further backwards, so to speak. With relegation, it's definitely a step backwards, isn't it? I mean, they had Paul Carden brought in at fairly early in the season on the 21st of September. Maybe that was too early to get rid of Mark Beasley. Where is Mark Beasley now, actually? That is a great question, because that is arguably the defining moment of this season, so to speak. He's at FC United and Manchester now, apparently. But yeah, he resigned at the beginning of the season, Mark Beasley. And I think he could have actually probably turned it around. I think he could have actually... It was probably jumped before he was pushed. But I did think, you know what, Mark Beasley could have done it. But maybe not. SC United haven't had the greatest season this season either, have they? Third place is Chorley. They actually finished in 5th. It was playoffs regardless. I don't think anyone's particularly surprised about that. They always seem to end up in the playoffs, don't they, Chorley? Chorley will get into the playoffs. Yeah, I think it may be a bit of an underwhelming season to be not in the top 3, actually, possibly. But I'm sure Chorley fans will be up and ready for it again. And I think it's actually probably best for the club to be at that level of consistently high up in the National League North. Because I think if they did get promoted, they'd struggle in the National League. So yeah, second Kidderminster Harriers, they finished 3rd. We're quibbling over a point here, let's be honest. I think Phil Brown is a very successful manager, and I'm really surprised that he's gone now. Maybe they couldn't afford his wages anymore. But yeah, I thought really sort of enthusiastic season, and it has been. I think it has been a disappointing playoff campaign, so to speak, but 3 points off the title. Certainly a team which you could potentially consider as definite early favourites for automatic promotion next season, especially with only AFC Fylde coming down from the league above. I mean, there are some good teams who are coming from below, but certainly I think Kidderminster Harriers will be in the race for promotion again this season. First Needham Market, they actually finished in 21st. That is a shocker of an appointment. I thought, you know what, they're one of them teams that on that winning bounce, on that winning streak. No. I think it's one of them teams that maybe it was a step too far. I was thinking Aveley sort of levels. You remember Aveley back a couple of seasons ago, managed to reach the playoffs. Tamworth actually won the title the season before last. So yeah, I thought Needham Market would be a decent competitive outfit. They were not, which did disappoint me, so to speak. I mean, if you saw the predictions week on week, was desperately wanting to see them win at some point, you know. On to the National League South. Last place, I had Hemel Hempstead Town. They finished 12th, which was much more decent than I thought. I thought they were in one of them teams which were horrendous end of last season. They were going to continue at this season. But yeah, they did better than I probably expected. But at the same time, I don't think they did actually keep Bobby Wilkinson in the at the end. Because I didn't rate him as a manager, and I don't. No, they didn't. So it was just one of them ones which it wasn't the right manager to a point, and I think they did start slowly this season. I'm pretty certain. But yeah, it is always hard to say when they change a manager during the season, and that actually gets a large upturn in form. I can't see the future. I have to base it on terms of what I've got in front of me, and Hemel Hempstead were pretty poor at the end of that season, and I thought they're going to continue to be into this season just gone. 23rd, Slough, another team mid-table in 16th place. I thought Slough is usually a relegation battle, so to speak. It must be said, Scott Davis, I don't know. I still don't overly rate him at the moment. Yes, he got mid-table, but he's been at Slough a long time, and I don't think they've actually improved under him. The question is, I think, how long do you stick or twist? You know, I think in non-league you have a lot more patience with managers. But yeah, I wasn't overly convinced that they're going to do well this season. They did do mid-table, so I suppose that is something. Yeah, I think. Where does Slough actually aim to be at the moment? Because they seem to have been bit mediocre the last few seasons. 22nd, Tunbridge Angels, not 17th. It's not like all the mid-table teams are the teams that I got predicted to be relegated. I thought Tunbridge Angels were a team which were travelling backwards. I mean, they never looked in danger this season, but they have been really poor at the end of the season, it must be said. I just thought they were going to get a bit too comfortable, a bit like, say, a Dartford last season or Dover at one point in time, Havant at Waterlooville. You look at these teams; they're very comfortable in the National League or Hungerford, and then they ended up eventually getting relegated because better teams were coming up. And I thought that'll be a similar case with Tonbridge Angels, and that has not been the case, so to speak. I mean, it is not. I'm not going to remove that from a realm of possibility. They'll continue to be that. I mean, you look at St Albans City, Welling United this season, both of them fairly established clubs at this level. So yeah, a lot of these mid-table teams, anybody from sort of, you're looking, I'll probably say Hemel Hempstead down to Hampton Richmond Borough, other than Chesham, are all quite established at this level. And any one of them could really fall through the gap potentially. Well, we'll also include Chelmsford City, Max. I have them predicted in 21st for much a similar reason. To be fair, they finished in playoffs last season, and so I got a lot of grief for this one. I just thought it was a bit of a double-edged sword, and it has proved to be. They were nowhere near playoffs this season, and they weren't anywhere near relegation. So that was a bit of a silly prediction in terms of my thoughts. I thought Robbie Simpson was going to jump ship, and he has now left at the end of his season, retiring from management, which is always a bit odd one. He's only 40 years old. He has for the last 5 seasons at Chelmsford. So I think he's looking for a better opportunity, to be honest. So we'll see who takes him up. But yeah, it was certainly one which I thought was... I think they could have done better this season, but also from predictions, obviously, I thought they could have done worse. 20th, Weymouth. They did get relegated in the end. I thought they're a bit like Farsley in the National League North, that they always seem to have stayed up. But that didn't come off this season, to be honest. Finishing 23rd. Realistically, never were going to stay up. They were rooted to the bottom of the table for most of the season, I'm going to be honest. So yeah, Weymouth should have had them on relegation, to be honest. I don't know why I thought they were going to stay up. I just thought they stayed up last season, so they're going to stay up again this time, but no. 19th place, Farnborough. Farnborough actually finished in 10th. I mean, it's another season where they sort of finished just about mid-table, maybe an outside shout playoffs. I mean, let's be honest, they weren't ever going to get playoffs. It was one of them ones. I didn't think they would be able to necessarily overly build on last season. I thought I'd probably drop down a bit, but instead they're sort of flatlined to where they were roughly last season. And so yeah, I would say Farnborough can continue building on what they've currently got, actually, because yeah, I was foolish with that one. 18th place at Boreham Wood actually went ahead and won the playoffs and got 5th place. In hindsight, like saying this, no, they got relegated from the National League, and they just appointed Ross Jenkins, who was Oxford City manager, who also got relegated. And look at what transpired. With Ross Jenkins, they finished woefully. They were diabolical, so to speak. They were in a position where they were going to finish in 18th, actually, ironically enough. And then they just missed him and brought in someone else. And he went back to Oxford City. So I think, given a full season, I think Ross Jenkins would have finished in 18th. But because they decided to change it early, they did a very good job and didn't manage to get into the playoffs. I mean, get promoted out of the playoffs. 17th place, Truro City. I thought maybe a season from now would have been the title winning, like as in next season. But no, they won the title this season, so very well done to the Cornish club. I mean, it was an inspired managerial appointment, John Askey. That was certainly one that I got behind. I just thought they need a season to sort of get used to their new stadium, different new playing surface, sometimes take a bit of time to adapt. But no, they got straight on it, and they've done well all season, to be honest. It's fully interesting to see them in the National League. Highest they've ever been, and the highest a team from Cornwall's ever been. 16th place, Salisbury. They actually finished in 20th. I thought it was hard to say with Brian Dutton as manager, really, where they were going to finish. It was a very inexperienced managerial appointment at the end of the day. And, well, he had been at Salisbury for a long time, but in terms of it, I don't think he'd ever been at this level before. I mean, he had a few games at Walsall which weren't very good. And I still don't highly rate him as a manager. But yeah, it was interesting to see. It was a very hard one to predict, and they did stay up at the end. I just thought it would have been slightly more comfortable in it. 15th place, Eastbourne Borough actually finished in 3rd. I mean, this one, I just didn't think Adam Murray would have been the sort of philosophical approach to football in the National League South, but it did work very effectively. But I think they just needed a bit of a. I thought this was going to be a bit of a transition season, getting a full-blown project with Adam Murray in charge. But no, they went to the playoffs, and actually they ended up getting the playoffs. Certainly, it will be exciting to see where they end up in the future. 14th, Hampton Richmond Borough. Very typical mid-table side, to be honest. They finished at 18th, which is probably slightly below where they expected to be, actually, in reality. But yeah, their crash from last season did continue. They finished 9th the season before, and they were in the playoffs for most of the season, to be honest. And I think that's proved to be a bit of a detriment this season as they finished down in 18th. They need to sort of find some form of stability and quick, because this season I don't think has quite been good enough. Because you normally want to be moving upwards the table. You don't want to be going down, so to speak. That's the wrong direction to be going. 13th, Chesham United. I got this one dead on right. They finished in 13th. Yeah, they had a lot of signings, but not too many. Like, it was a good combination. They got promoted and they were optimistic, and mid-table, I think, well and truly deserved. And Chesham have been a delight to see in this league, it must be said. So yeah, I think a long-term sustainability reasons, 13th is a great finish, which they had. 12th, Weston-super-Mare, finished in 8th. Slightly better than I thought they would be. I did rate Scott Bartlett, and I thought, you know what, it was going to be another mid-table finish, continuing to build. They're in the middle of a project. They finished just above that. They finished in 8th. They were chasing playoffs for some parts of the season. Alas, could not get in. Yeah, I would say Weston-super-Mare's season overall has been quite a positive one. And certainly built on what they finished in last season. 11th, Bath City. They finished 15th mid-table. We're squabbling over a few places here, aren't we? They could have done better this season, but I mean, I did think that Bath City the season before were just punching above their weight, and actually, they did sort of prove that as they did drop down to 15th. They were for most of the season actually a bit lower, but they did have a late surge which pushed them into solid mid-table, which I think is about where I predicted Bath to be honest. 10th, Torquay. They actually finished in 2nd. It was difficult to always say. I did get a lot of people in the comment section saying that Torquay were going to definitely get promoted or whatever. They didn't get promoted. They did finish in 2nd, admittedly. I thought post-administration, it's going to take a while to rebuild. As a Derby fan, we had administration a few seasons back, and it took us 2 seasons to build on that. Maybe it's slightly less down in the semi. Well, it's not all teams are semi-pro, but a lot of them are semi-pro. But they did do well. let's put it kindly that they did a phenomenal job, because they worked in terms of a good platform for next season, so we say. I certainly think they will be competitive next season. 9th, Welling United. Yeah, I think Stringer just was not the right appointment. That's in hindsight saying that, because actually when I said that at the time, that was not my viewpoint. I thought he would be a fantastic manager to get them up. He was a proven match winner. They brought in Lee Martin, which is an even more bizarre managerial appointment for next season. We'll see what he can do. But yeah, Welling, disappointing. I thought they needed to bring in a winner, but they brought in a winner from the leagues below, and therefore the style of play was suited to the league below, so they actually got relegated. Probably about time. I mean, yeah, it was a disappointing season for Welling, but probably drew an end to a saga which had been dragging on for a while now. 8th place, Chippenham. They finished in 14th. Yeah, they normally finish in mid-table, so I don't know why they why I had them so high. They are a bit like the Spennymoor of the National League North. I will stick by that statement. I thought they had slightly better quality to be able to mount a playoff push, but it didn't look like anyone was really up for it at times, because there were certainly opportunities where they could have potentially pushed for it, but no. No, they finished 20 points off the playoffs, and I think it's fair to say that there wasn't the effort there, which I would have liked to see. 7th place, Enfield Town, actually finished in 19th. So at least they stayed up, but yeah, they weren't playoff contenders, so we say. I thought Gavin Pearson rather would be a great acquisition, and I think he's done the job which I would say he was brought in to do, which is stay in the league. I just thought positivity, they would have gone on and done a better job. Apologies. 6th place, St Albans City. Now, this is one of them really bizarre ones that they finished in relegation zone in 21st, last day of the season. Fair, really. What happened? They were just outside the playoffs last season. They finished in 11th, but due to a bit of capitulation. That capitulation will continue this season into a relegation zone. What on earth happened? Like, I thought, you know what? I'm going to rebuild. They're going to get into the playoffs. No, they were completely, they sunk like a stone. Very disappointing from St Albans altogether. 5th, Aveley. They actually finished in 24th. I mean, a lot of people did say they were going to struggle, but I thought, you know what? They were just a little bit of a chip on the shoulder sort of team, that sort of underdog mentality, and they were successful in previous seasons. They reached the playoff final, didn't they, a few seasons back, and I think that may have been their ceiling ultimately. So they did instead start to regress very quickly. It didn't take long to see them absolutely pummeling towards the bottom of the league. That's where they finished. 4th placed, Dorking Wanderers. They finished in 6th. I'm not going to complain too much about that one. It was one of them ones where it was very likely for them to get to the playoffs. They'd been in the National League South promotion push before. They had experience. So yeah, it was always a likelihood of them to be competitive this season, and they were. Certainly a team which I think maybe a bit higher than 6th next season, maybe going towards that title, or that at least that top 3 spot. 3rd, Maidstone United. Bit of a disappointing one for Maidstone. 7th place, but it was still playoffs. I just thought they'd be one of them ones automatically into the semi-finals. You looked at how well we did last season, that sort of thing. You still remember that season, of course. An unbelievable FA Cup run. Great job with Elo Kobai at the wheel. Maybe is Elo Kobo actually decided to jump ship? Was that? No, he's still there. I don't know. Maybe it was just a stronger league this season, but I thought they were going to be quite competitive this time round. Go on and make something of this league. I mean, 7th is still decent, but it was one of them ones which I think it was a bit more disappointing than I anticipated. Second, Worthing, they finished in 4th, 1 point difference. We're not complaining too much about this one, but they've been going in the developing in the right direction, and Worthing is certainly a team that I can see just going up and up and up at the moment. They're certainly a positive young team. They always get exciting management thing. They do remind me of their fellow Sussex team, Brighton, just lower down. They're really building in the right direction at the moment. So yeah, Worthing certainly did well this season, even though it wasn't the second that I thought it was 4th. First, Hornchurch, finished in 9th, so that's not really true. I thought it was back-to-back promotions, but they did carry out positivity into the league somewhat, finishing 9th. There's a bit of a difference, though, between 9th and winning the league, isn't there? And I thought, you know what, they're going to continue that running momentum of winning. It doesn't quite translate as easily in the National League South, so I might revise that next season. On to the National League. Just before we go on to the National League, we're going to answer the questions that Wednesday Night has put in. Good evening. Good evening. When can we expect your 2025-26 prediction videos, beginning with your National League North, South, and South predictions? That will be 5 weeks before the start of the National League North, South season. So that's normally a couple of weeks from now, I believe. They start in early August. So yeah, I'd say probably a couple of weeks from this point. I have once played Football Manager. That was a long time ago now. I tried a campaign with Alfreton Town. I was absolutely rubbish. I know people who do. It's a good fun thing. Oh, yes, Scott Dogdale. Yep. Who do you think is the greatest Sunderland player of all time? Interesting you mentioned that, because I'm pretty certain there is a video me going through the greatest players of all time in terms of as a club. Just trying to think on the top of my head, because Peter Reid's a manager, isn't he? I'm just trying to think of players that have played for Sunderland. Maybe there was a player called Jimmy Montgomery back in the day, goalkeeper for Sunderland. Just looking at some of the Sunderland players, he played for Sunderland between 1960 and 1977, and he was a Macca himself. He won the FA Cup with them and won the second division with them. So probably Jimmy Montgomery. Yeah, it was certainly one of them times that Sunderland were a better team than they were now. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, on to the National League. I had 24th Braintree Town. I thought it was a bit of a step too far for the Essex team, but they actually finished really well. They finished in 17th. I was very surprised, because actually they were in relegation zone for a bit, and then they had a bit of a surge and got a solid 17th place finish. I think it's quite impressive their first season. Certainly a team which is fighting above their weight. I think if you look at it, one of them ones which Angelo Harrop is a great manager. I will say that now. I just think it was one of them ones that I think they're semi-professional. It's a small team in a big league. It was quite hard to tell, really. 23rd, I had Wealdstone, and they actually finished in 20th, so they did just survive, but it was a touch and go affair for a lot of this season, and it did prove to be the case, to be honest. They didn't get relegated in the end, so slightly better than I anticipated, but it was still a pretty poor season. But I'm probably where about Wealdstone would expect to be, though. 22nd, Boston United. They finished in 19th. Although for most of the season, it looked like they were going to finish 22nd. They had a phenomenal turnaround, that must be said. I mean, I don't think they stuck with Ian Culverhouse, did they, throughout the season? Yeah, he went off to St Albans, and that change was a change which really inspired the team, so to speak, to go on to the next one, because they brought in Graham Coughlin. Absolutely great manager, Graham Coughlin, as well. Having plenty of EFL experience as well. So he certainly brought in that sort of higher standard of football which is needed in the National League, and managed to get them out of that relegation zone. A great escape really must be the words which sums it up, to be honest. 21st, Gateshead. I mean, they actually were going to be allowed in the playoffs if they reached it. They finished in 8th in the end. I thought it was a bit of a touch and go sort of experience, because we didn't know whether they were going to be allowed in playoffs, which means whether they're going to be able to recruit playoff ability players. Also, Rob Elliott. There was a whole situation with him, wasn't there? Because if you don't know what happened, he basically went off to Crawley Town at the start of the season, essentially. And let's just put it kindly, did not do a great job at Crawley. Effectively got them relegated. And I think similar, Gateshead seem to have avoided that this season, and they must be very relieved at that anyway, because I think if Rob Elliott was still at the Heed, he would have taken them down. 20th, Ebbsfleet United. They finished in 24th. They have been rotten this season. I didn't understand anything. It was always going to be a really hard season. They brought in a manager, Danny Searle. It was just, everything was wrong with this club coming into this season. And rightfully, they were bottom of the league. They were by far the worst team. I just thought they were going to just about survive. You never know, get some lucky points here and there, but no. 19th place, Yeovil. They finished in 18th, 1 point difference. Roughly where I predicted them. Because I know a lot of Yeovil fans were getting a bit overexcited, saying we're going to get promoted again because we got promoted last season. I didn't think that was entirely going to be the case. I thought they'll be more looking over their shoulder, looking to survive. And actually, at the end of the day, they were 4 points above relegation zone. Wasn't quite looking over their shoulder territory, but certainly bit scary at times, potentially. And wasn't too far from where I ultimately thought they would be. So yeah, that's why you don't overblow your expectations, so to speak. Oh, why frozen? I don't know if the stream's frozen. Well, because I can't get onto the other tab, which actually has where my predictions are, because I'm currently stuck on the league table. Oh, how was everyone's day going, eh? I don't know why this is happening. Probably too many tabs open. But I can't do anything to close them at the moment because my mouse is frozen. Apologies for this, if it is still going out live. I do not know if it is. This may completely have just cut off. If that's the case, I'm going to need to reopen everything. Oh. Dun, 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 dun. Well, if this is still going out live, then just great. I mean, I've managed to get the PowerPoint back up, but I still can't move the mouse. So, see how much I can remember. 18th place, I had Tamworth, which definitely didn't finish in 18th. I'm pretty certain. Oh, this is going to be so frustrating because I can't move the mouse. I'm going to be back in 2 minutes. I'm going to go and get my phone. Let's see what I can do. Right. Let's see what we have. FN F7. F8. Mutes my microphone. I am going to restart my device, and I don't want to, but I might have to turn on and off again. I'm back. I don't know where I left off, but I'm back. If hopefully that is all set up and fine now. I don't know where I finished, which is not ideal. I'm going to guess I was roughly cut off around about the Gateshead bit. So I may have ended up repeating myself at this point in the stream, because I'm basically, if you do not know, my mouse decided to freeze, so I restarted my device. Gateshead I had as 21st, but they actually finished in 8th place in total. I mean, I always thought the playoff bar, we didn't know that was going to be sorted at the start of the season. So that could have had an impact on recruitment or something like that. And Rob Elliott did actually walk very early on in the season, and look what he did with Crawley. He got Crawley relegated, so I'm not particularly surprised, because he could have done a very similar thing with Gateshead. 20th place, Ebbsfleet. Well, Ebbsfleet ended up doing a bit better than that. They finished in... Sorry, they did a bit worse than that, finishing in 24th. And it was always going to be a struggle for Ebbsfleet. It was a weird appointment, Danny Searle, and it was really just one of them things that they should possibly have not gone down that line. There was some weird stuff going on, and so that just couldn't get into the season, to be honest. So yeah, that's where Ebbsfleet are at. 19th place at Yeovil, and Yeovil actually finished in 18th. So it's not too shocking, this one, for me. A lot of over expectations placed upon Yeovil. They got promoted last season. Like, we're going to go back to back and stuff. It wasn't going to happen. It was a realistic prediction. I thought it was going to be a bit of more of a relegation battle. And they stayed up in the end by 4 points. And that's where I thought they were going to be. You know, roughly around about 3 or 4 points above relegation zone. So yeah, and to be fair, they did opt to keep Mark Cooper, and he did do a better job this time round with Yeovil than he did last time round, so to speak. On to 18th is Tamworth. Tamworth actually finished in 10th. They did incredible in this season. And I thought, you know what? It was going to be just about to stay up. It's about stability, staying up this season. I did not in any way, shape or form expect them to go ahead. And I mean, there were times when I thought they could end up getting into the playoffs. They weren't quite consistent. They were 4 points off, though. So certainly this season, Tamworth are roundly deserving applause. Much better than the 18th I had. And so their defense wasn't as phenomenal as it was last season, but it was still a good team. They knew how to get points. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. 17th place, Aldrincham, they actually finished in 9th. And it's a hard one because I thought they overachieved the season before, and I think they did. If they got into the playoffs, I believe they may not have done actually. They may actually be on just a bit of better run of form now. Aldrincham, maybe a better club. I don't know if I'm ever prepared to say that they're going to get playoffs, but certainly a team that must be now considered to be a bit higher up there than they were a few seasons back when they finished regularly in 17th in like 2020, 21 and 2022, 23. Yeah. So 16th, I had Eastleigh. Eastleigh finished in 13th. Not too much difference here. 2 points. It was mid-table regardless. They always seem to be in mid-table, don't they? They finished in 13th this season. It's no different from where Eastleigh usually are. And every league, I believe, has got this just one mid-table, mediocre team. And that does just happen to be Eastleigh in this league, doesn't it? Never really anything much exciting which happens with this club. 15th place, Oldham Athletic. They've actually finished in 5th. They did much better than I anticipated. But to be fair, most of the season before last, they were a bit in mid-table. And I thought they're a mid-table team in terms of they had a mid-table manager and Mickey Mellon, although he is a good manager, but he's typically a mid-table manager, so to speak. But no, he did an all right job and succeeded where many had failed previously, as in to achieve promotion from the National League. And they are now back in the EFL. And I think everybody, apart from maybe Rochdale fans, will be so much more happy to see Oldham back where they belong. Well, in my opinion, where they belong. 14th, York City. I did not expect them to go ahead and become second in the league. That is absolutely outstandingly great achievement, so to speak. But yeah, I did rate Adam Hinshelwood. I always have done. But I wouldn't have said that they would have managed to go from being relegation scrappers, so to speak, to winning, or not quite winning, just avoiding winning the league by the narrowest of margins. So yeah, I think well done, York City, to do so well. I thought, yeah, solid mid-table. They're going to continue to build, but no, they've jumped straight up in my estimations. And you would have to say that there'd be good money for your money to say that they might go ahead and win the league title next season. 13th, Southend United. They finished in 7th. I thought, I mean, let's go back to where they were when I made these predictions. We didn't know where they were even allowed to play in Roots Hall. The club was potentially going to be dissolved, liquidated, and it was just a whole sort of huge scenario. And so I thought mid-table, that's where I about see them. Galvanized, strength, and unity. They've gone and got playoffs. And what a way to capitalize the end of this of a whole season from real difficulty to making the playoff final. What a season for Southend, and they can only improve from here, surely. 12th, Sutton United. They finished 12th. I said they would, and they did. I always think it's quite difficult to recover. If you get relegated from the EFL, you're never really going to get an instant return. And it did prove to be the case. It was a very abject, mid-table, mediocre sort of form. Never really looking to challenge towards the playoffs. Never really looking like a relegation team. Bang on in mid-table in 12th. 11th, Forest Green Rovers. Now, Forest Green Rovers did sort of slightly bump to an end by finishing 3rd. I mean, it was weird seeing Steve Cotterill in the National League. I think everyone can agree with that. But yeah, I think maybe slightly misjudged Forest Green this season. They did not finish 11th. They finished in 3rd. But, I mean, it's still probably an underachievement to where Forest Green Rovers fans think they should be of winning the league. So, yeah, I think it's one of them ones which I'm not going to say that it was a horrendous prediction, but it was a pretty poor prediction compared to where they finished. But they didn't get promotion, which is on one hand one of the things I did say. 10th, Hartlepool United. They finished in 11th. Not much difference. It's a lot of it's to do with the ownership, to be honest. Real odd owners at the moment going on there. They appointed Darren Saal. He did not definitely last the whole season. No, he didn't. He lasted until October. Like, it's an absolute farce, the stuff that goes on at Hartlepool, to be honest. I did think, you know what, they're going to finish with an outside chance of playoffs, which was 8 points away, so maybe you can consider that. And I thought, you know what, we're going to be one of them teams that slow builders, and actually get over. No, more uncertainty rocking this club. 9th, Aldershot Town. They finished in 16th. Not quite as good as they were last season, eh? They've sort of gone back to their traditional self, so to speak. Aldershot last season looked like they were going to get into some playoffs for most of it. But no, this time around they were back to their lower half, low mid-table self. And yeah, I think Aldershot, do they ever get back a recovery to try and aim for the playoffs again? They will eventually at some point, but I'm not seeing it at the moment. I mean, Tommy Witherington, he ended up staying at the club. So, yeah, certainly he can certainly build on that, knowing that they gave a right good go. They finished in 8th place overall last season, but this season not so great. I mean, they won the FA Trophy, to be fair, which is something. You know, they did win something this season, so it's not been a total disappointment. Just the league standings aren't quite where I would anticipate them to be. 8th place, Fylde, actually finished in relegation zone in 23rd. I just thought there's always a team which causes a bit of a shock, and you know what? I thought Fylde could have been that one. because they're well financially backed. But Chris Breach did a good job in keeping them up in the league, and I just thought Fylde could have taken that next step and gone up, but no. And now back competing in the National League North. 7th, Rochdale, and they finished in 4th. So they did finish in the playoffs in the end, as I sort of expected them to. They were slowly getting back on their feet, and I think that this season is sort of where I about expected them to be in terms of in the playoffs on a rebuild, but not getting the promotion from it. It wasn't the exact position, but it was near enough, and obviously they will be moving on to next season, anticipating to grow from strength to strength and give it another jolly good go next season. 6th, Maidenhead United. That was the worst prediction of the lot. They finished in 22nd. I need to stop doing these absurd predictions because that was an absurd one. There's no defense on that one whatsoever. To actually see Maidenhead relegated is quite a ridiculous notion, so to speak. I didn't expect it myself. But yeah. 5th, Dagenham and Redbridge. They also got relegated in 21st. Now, the thing is, Dagenham and Redbridge actually have, infrastructure-wise, an EFL club, right? They do. But for some reason, they just not there. And they got relegated this season. Maybe it's the players. Maybe it's managerial appointments. They had Ben Strevens this season just gone by. And he left in December, 5 points above relegation zone. So I think we could well argue that if he stayed at the club, they would have actually stayed up. Hindsight's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Yeah. 4th place, Woking, actually finishing 15th. I mean, I thought, you know what, we if you exclude last season, they were a team that were successful in before that. They finished 4th the season before last, as in 3 seasons ago now, so to speak. And yeah, I just thought it would be one of them ones that are back to the old Woking self. And that old Woking self this season did transpire to be another mid-table team. 3rd, FC Halifax Town. They actually finished 6th. So I did predict these ones to get playoffs, and they did indeed. So that one wasn't too bad. And you know what? You would have to back Richer to get playoffs essentially next season as well, wouldn't you? They're a team which is now regularly competing up at the upper ends of the table, regularly looking like a team which will get into the playoffs. And that must all go down to Chris Millington, who has really he was an assistant manager originally at Richer, and then full-time manager. Alas, now, though, to be fair, he is no longer there. He has left at the end of the season, having failed in the playoffs, but I'm sure everybody who's a Halifax fan will remember him fondly, especially the FA Trophy that he won in 2022-23. I'm imagining going to go on to do better things, to be honest. I can imagine him getting picked up potentially by an EFL club in the near future. I would have said possibly as an outsider shout of Huddersfield Town as possibly being one of them, but they have actually now appointed Lee Grant, bizarrely, as a manager. I would have thought that Millington would have been a safer option. I mean, I can also see him potentially going maybe back to somewhere like I don't know if he's quite ready. The thing is, there's a large degree of, I don't think there's anybody who's in League One or League Two who would be ready to take the risk on him at the moment. So maybe if Rochdale changed their manager, I could see him potentially going to Rochdale. But I don't know if how willing they'd be to part with Jimmy McNulty right now, considering how much of a good season he's had. It's really hard to tell, like, where Chris Millington actually goes, because unless he ends up going to somewhere like further than where he's used to, down to maybe not Newport, maybe he becomes a number 2 again. I don't know, but yeah, it's an odd one with Chris Millington at the moment. I don't know why he's done what he's done. I mean, he was Pete Wild's assistant for a while, and he is manager of Fleetwood. So does he go and become number 2 at Fleetwood? I don't know. Would be a bit of a odd one, wouldn't it? Second, Solihull Moors. Oh, they finished 14th. So bad at these. I thought they reached the FA Trophy last season. They reached the playoff finals. You know what? It's really bizarre because they actually should have finished in the playoffs based on last season. So the fact that we're in mid-table this season, that is poor from Solihull Moors. I'm not taking any claim to having a poor prediction on that one. No one in the world could have predicted that they would have had such a drop-off. And first place, Barnet. It was an obvious one to say. That's all I'm going to say. It was an obvious one. They had everything there. You had Dean Brennan at the hold. You had a club with EFL history. You had a good stadium. Just everything about Barnet this season have been absolutely phenomenal. And it shows that loyalty really does pay off, to be honest. On to League Two, which, surprise, surprise, I actually got the first one right. Carlisle finishing in 24th. Okay, they didn't finish 24th. They finished in 23rd. But they actually got relegated, right? Lots of people were saying there was no way that Carlisle would be relegated. They were. Back-to-back relegations. I expected that to happen. I'm so chuffed with that prediction. And obviously, if you're a Carlisle fan, I do apologise for my almost gloating over your pitiful situation right now. But as I sure you can understand, it was one of them ones which a lot of people did not expect Carlisle to be relegated, and I had that on the money. So yeah, I think Carlisle will probably need to take a season to take stock next season round, and I don't think they'll continue falling as much as they have done. But yeah, it was so obvious that they were going to continue their free fall. They conceded 81 goals the season before, and they actually did have a better defence this season round. But yeah, the free fall of this club at the moment needs to be studied, really. 23rd, Notts County. Okay, and now the feel-good factor has well and truly dissipated because they finished in the playoffs. To be fair, they lost Luke Williams when I started the season. He went off to Swansea, and they brought in Stuart Maynard, and he was from Wealdstone. Same up, Wealdstone, like the Wealdstone itself that was in mid-table in the National League. So I didn't entirely expect it to go well, but he did an all right job this season. Not enough to have managed to keep his job, however. He has been sacked. Like, let's be honest. Stuart Maynard should not have been sacked. Actually, I don't know. I mean, I might do a video later going for who should have been sacked and who shouldn't have. But it was one of the ones. If you're going to have Stuart Maynard and you get the playoffs, then you don't sack him for getting the playoffs. Like, it was very unlikely for me that Notts County were going to reach the playoffs. Obviously, as I said, they were going to be relegation. But they're a surprise for everyone, aren't they? 22nd, Salford City finishing 8th. That's a poor one. I just thought they were just slipping and sliding downwards. But no, another comfortable season challenging the playoffs, to be honest. I mean, a lot of the shine on Salford City has gone now. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Wrexham is now the new media lover boy. And yeah, Salford are nowhere to be seen in that regard, but they're still the group of the class of '92 still seem to be backing the club. I don't know where they're going to end up in the next few years because I don't see them managing to surmount that playoff unless they manage to get a good playoff win. They could get promoted in terms of that, but I don't see them going any higher than League One. 21st Walsall. Oh my days! I did not expect them to go ahead and finish fourth, or even win the league, as a lot of the loss in the season it looked like they were going to. I thought, you know what, it will be back to normal Walsall, lower half, relegation strugglers, nonsense. So I apologise to Walsall, a team of great renown, of course, in the Black Country. So yeah, I mean, if only we got promoted, hey, I'm going to make me look even more stupid. I'm saying that because the next one I got is Doncaster Rovers, who I got as 20th, and they actually won the league. Such a poor prediction. I mean, Grant McCann, should have known better. I should have gone and trusted him and said that he would have done a great job, you know. But there was times that I think Grant McCann did do a poor job. I just think there's so many appointments as well that Doncaster made really good. I mean, I know a few Derby links for this over this transfer window have already emerged, but you know, Luke Molyneux, Billy Sharp, these players are great players. What was I actually thinking to think that Doncaster were going to be as low as 20th? Really, Maxwell as well, and just you know what, I think we're going to see Doncaster do really well in League One next season. Don't quote me on that. 19th AFC Wimbledon. They actually finished 5th. So far, out of the top 7, we've got 4. Or top 8, we've got 5, which I've got all predicted to finish in the bottom 6. That's not great. But like, to be fair, Wimbledon finished in mid-table last season. And I thought it was just going to go a bit further backwards, and I didn't really trust Johnny Jackson to be the greatest manager, but he did an all right job. He won the playoffs after all, to be fair, and it must be said, congratulations to Wimbledon because you surprised me this season. And as did you, Johnny Jackson. So, an apologies to all of these fans I've already offended. Okay, 18th, Morecambe. Yeah, I mean, it was almost predictable that they were going to be down at that end of the table. I didn't expect them to be bottom of the table. Yeah, I thought they were going to be a bit more lower mid-table, you know. I thought Derek Adams, I had a lot of faith in Derek Adams to be able to pull off a bit more of a wonder. He did not. He really didn't. But that's not entirely strictly down to him. A lot of it is down to the remote ownership, which has now been relieved. They're now owned by a different group of people. So hopefully that does mean that Morecambe can rebuild and go better, because they were on the verge of folding in the off-season, if not. So yeah, it's a really odd situation at this club, but I think I think anybody in the right mind would have known it would have been a struggle this season. Hence why I said 18th. Didn't realise that would actually be an optimistic position. 17th, Port Vale. They actually finished in 2nd. Yeah. But I mean, it was an instant return, to be honest. I didn't anticipate that. I thought this would have been a bit of a reset season. You know, in mid-table, because yeah, I felt like usually they were mid-table. Fort Vale over the past, they have been a very typical League Two mid-table team. No, Darren Moore is back to being flavour of the month. To be honest, he really has done a great job at Port Vale, and now wait till we just see him being poached by like rival Stoke City, for example. Or maybe even going back to Sheffield Wednesday. Well, that's a toxic club right now. I wouldn't touch that with a large ball, to be fair. But like ending up somewhere, and then result like he'll do bad next season in Port Vale. He'll then get the sack, and then move to like a Warsaw, or he'll get poached by someone, and then the whole did cycle will start again. 16th place, Gillingham. Gillingham finished in 17th. Okay, we got a bit of a better one here. Okay, it wasn't too hard to say. Gillingham always finish in mid-table. I keep on seeing on my feed that people think that Gillingham is a big club. Gillingham is not a big club. It never has been. I had a few decent seasons in League One, but they were never a big club. And this has just proved why. They're mid-table in League Two. Yes, they're probably underperforming. That's fair to say. But big club, no. 15th, Fleetwood. They finished in 14th. We're getting some better ones now. It was only goal difference, only the reason why Fleetwood didn't finish there. They were in a relegation battle for the last fair few seasons, and I think it has taken until now to realise that they're not going to be automatic promotion candidates. And I think they've managed to sort of stabilize themselves. I think that was the important thing this season. Now, I don't know if they stuck with Charlie Adam at the end of the day. No, they didn't. Because he became set-piece coach at Everton for some reason. But he was sacked anyway. But yeah, I think Fleetwood are looking for somebody to maybe start a project from, but we need to see who that person is. I don't know if current Fleetwood Town manager Pete Wild could be the person actually to take that project on to the next level. He's done some success in the past. We're going to talk about him in terms of regards to Halifax, so maybe. 14th, Bromley. Bromley finished in 11th, which I'm not going to quibble with too much. It is 6 points, but it is about where I predicted, sort of mid-table. And it is sort of roughly where the playoffs, it's not the playoffs, like the promoted teams tend to go from the National League. They tend to finish around about mid-table. So, yeah, it was very expected, but Bromley finished where they finished. 13th, Swindon Town. They finished in 12th. Goal difference only. We'll take that one. To be fair, when I made these predictions, this was quite a wild one to even say that Swindon were going to finish in mid-table. So, yeah, I'm happy that they decided to prove me right. Because, you know what? It could have been a whole lot worse, and I could have had egg all over my face, as I have done already several times this video. But no, Swindon, great job this season, and really provides a good platform for them to move into next season. You know, it wasn't a relegation battle. Players who may be thinking of coming to Swindon can now see that and say, actually, you know what? They were closer to being in the playoffs than being relegated. And so would probably be willing to more likely move to the club. 12th, Accrington Stanley, actually finishing 21st, which I think is a... I thought last season was a rebuild, and as rebuild shows, you should be able to improve. There was no improvement. This was a horrendous season for Accrington Stanley. At times, I thought maybe they could have been relegated. But they won the 6 pointers they needed to win. But my days, Accrington Stanley, you're leaving it too much. And if this is a rebuild, then the rebuild is not working at current, so to speak. On to 11th, we've got Tranmere Rovers. Actually finished 20th. It was quite a disappointing campaign overall for Tranmere. But I thought they actually had things in place to be a decent team. They got a good stadium, good fan base, all that sort of thing. And Nigel Adkins. Nigel Adkins is a traditional heavy high flyer in some regards. I still remember when he was promoted from legal. Well, I don't remember as such, but he got promoted with back to back with Southampton into the Premier League. He had promotions with Scunthorpe United into a Championship. He did some wonderful things. So yeah, he was sacked this season. I'm not surprised, and maybe his time for management is over. But I just thought they had everything in place to be able to move on, and they just didn't. They yet again suffered another season of mediocrity. 10th, Grimsby Town. They finished in 9th. Thank you very much. I'm going to take that one as a decent prediction. And I said this club floats around the leagues and positions and tables more than a boat on its logo. And it was quite hard to sort of nail down where they are. So I actually think saying that they were in 10th and we finished in 9th, I'm happy with that one. Very much so. And I think if I continue to predict where Grimsby finish nearby that, I must say I'll be improving. 9th place, Crewe Alexandra. They finished in 13th. Bit of a disappointing season. Crewe at one point were definitely going to finish 9th, but they had a horrendous end to the season. I don't know why that was. Maybe it was a missing out of promotion. Maybe that mentality of a club at the moment is just that they can't see out a season. I don't know. Whatever it is, but Crewe somehow dropped down even further than I expected them to. It'll be interesting to see if they can manage to come back this season, but they need to have a large mentality sea change. 8th, Bradford City actually finished in 3rd. I did think they were improving season on season, and by Jove, they were. They certainly did improve, and they improved enough to get into the automatic promotion spots, which is more than I expected. But good on Bradford, and great to see them finally going back the way they belong. Because that team has dwindled in League Two for far too long. 7th, Colchester United. Actually finished 10th. Some people did actually laugh at me, including myself. I thought it was I thought maybe that's a stupid call. But actually, I'm proud to say that is a decent call. They didn't finish in the playoffs in the end. Okay, they finished 3 points off it. And there were several times when I thought, you know what, Colchester actually have an outsider chance to prove my suspicions right. So yeah, Colchester, thank you for not being totally dreadful as you usually are, and actually looking like you could get playoffs. 6th place, Harrogate Town. Actually didn't do that well this season in 18th. I thought, you know what, Simon Weaver, good manager, can continue that trajectory that they're going on and going to get playoffs. No, they sort of found their level now. They are around about that 18th, 19th place in League Two. 5th, Newport County. Actually finished in 22nd. Maybe it was a bit of rose-tinted glasses, but we always... But there used to be about a decade ago a club which would be regularly in the playoffs, and now they're not. So I don't know what's going on. Nelson Jardine was a rubbish appointment. They stuck with him for well too long with this Jardine fella, and the fresh personnel was needed, but where did they find this guy for one? He was an absolute dreadful manager. So yeah, Newport County. got to be on the radar for another poor season next season at this current rate. 4th, Cheltenham. Did not expect them to be that low in 15th. I thought, I mean, I thought they would have shown a bit more fight and spirit. They were last season the team which looked like they could probably stay up, but didn't quite. And I thought they were going to be quite competitive, carry on with that sort of fight. No, they didn't. They finished in 15th. Not relegated teams did good enough, to be honest, apart from Port Vale. But yeah, Cheltenham's certainly a team which I did not expect to be that low. On to 3rd, we had Barrow. I mean, they were in the playoffs the season before last for most of the campaign, finishing in about 8th or 12th. But they certainly were in the playoffs for a lot of time last season. And you know what? I thought they were going to continue it, but alas, they didn't. They went back to their traditional place in 16th. 2nd place, Chesterfield. Now, Chesterfield did a great job in pre-season. They did beat Derby County 4-0 in a pre-season friendly, which was not ideal. But I thought I sort of based it on that sort of logic and sort of said, well, they're going to do well coming into the season. I actually did. They finished in the playoffs in the end. And I'm so happy, actually, because I like seeing Derbyshire teams do well. And Chesterfield, I think, can build on top of this season. It's another season chalked up back in the Football League. 8 points off automatic promotion. Certainly wouldn't discredit another good season next season. First, MK Dons. Actually, them finishing in 19th is horrendous. Maybe that came a season too early, because I do think Paul Warne will do a good job this season. But I also said the same about Mike Williamson because I thought he was a good manager. So yeah, I'm at the loss of why MK Dons failed so badly this season. But from the early seasons, MK Dons looking, they got Paul Warne in charge. They brought in Nathaniel Mendes-Lang, a great player. I truly expect MK Dons to do much better next season. On to League One, 24th, Crawley Town. If anyone didn't have Crawley Town in the relegation zone, what were you doing? They finished in 21st in the end. It was an obvious call to make. They weren't convincing in League Two last season, but did manage to win the playoffs. Scott Lindsay then left, like, super early on in the season. It was all just a bit of a farce, to be honest, and eventually they were relegated. Only by a point, but yeah, they were relegated before. But point, they did have a good late run of the surge of the season, but you'd be naive not to have said they were going to be relegated. 23rd, Cambridge United. Another one dead on the door here. We got Cambridge United in 23rd, and they did indeed finish 23rd. Partly because the managerial merry-go-round, which happens at Cambridge, it just seems to never end. And I'm not really surprised that Cambridge did get relegated, because it was one of them ones. There was no stability at the club. Gary Monk didn't last that long either. I don't think anyone suspected him to. But he lasted probably longer than a lot of people thought he would, because he was only sacked at the end of the day on the 16th of February. And it was 8 points off from safety. It was just a little bit too late if you were going to change your manager at that point. But no, it's somehow the farce of the managerial cycle continues at Cambridge. 22nd, Exeter. Actually finished in 16th. They did better than I thought. It was based on some interesting things. And to be fair, they did make their home ground an absolute fortress, as they do. And I think I should have probably foresaw that coming in and predicted them for a mid-table finish. But it was a mental season all round anyway. I'm saying that to cover my back with 21st place Charlton Athletic, which actually finished 4th and won the playoffs. Yeah. I thought Nathan Jones was a bit overhyped, to to be honest, and I take that back. They made some great signings. But just I saw Charlton Athletic as being a team which was regularly lower end of a mid-table. About time that sort of run came to an end. But they somehow just managed to, out of absolutely nowhere. I don't even know where it came from. They managed to finish fourth and win the playoffs. But I wasn't absolutely naive in actually saying that, because but at a point in time, the Addicts were a team which were, I think they finished in like 16th the season before last, something like that. And it just wasn't looking great, having had years of abjectness and mediocrity. Anyway, on to 20th, we had Bristol Rovers. They finished in 22nd. I thought, to be fair, if Matt Taylor did stay at the club, maybe they would have stayed up, because actually it wasn't until after he left, not for Matt Taylor, who plays for, because if he actually had stayed, he probably could have kept them up at the end of the day, because he was in 20th at the time of his sacking, and I reckon he could have probably kept them there. But alas, they moved on to a different person and ultimately suffered the consequences and got relegated. But yeah, I did say a lack of aspiration for us as a club to travel backwards, and that was what I saw, and that did happen this season. 19th, Shrewsbury Town. I mean, they finished in 24th. It wasn't too much different. I thought it was going to be a fairly similar season to the one before last. I mean, Paul Hurst did a great job with Shrewsbury last time round, but that's like when Steve McLaren, the Mac, came back to Derby, and it was a romance factor, and he just didn't do as well in his second spell. Same with Paul Hurst, and ultimately was a decision that the Shrews lived to regret. But no, I thought they were going to stay up this season, but alas, they did not. 18th, Burton Albion. They actually finished in 20th. Only 4 points off 18th, though, mind you. And it was always a team which was likely to skirt with relegation. So, yeah, I think I'm no regrets with the Burton positioning in terms of that prediction. This one is ridiculous. 17th place, Birmingham City. Now, let's put it this way. When I made this prediction, the ownership has come in, sacked John Eustace, appointed Wayne Rooney, then eventually, after a bit of a delay, sacked Wayne Rooney, having all but been confirmed relegated by that point, and then appointed a man called Chris Davis, who had never managed a senior outfit in his life. Okay? Like, what was I meant to say in this situation? We'd just been relegated after throwing away the playoffs in the most atrocious manner possible. Like, they were in the driving seat to get playoffs before they got rid of Eustace. They then brought in Wayne Rooney, which was a stupid appointment anyway. And then brought in this guy called Chris Davis. Now, Chris Davis has clearly put his name on the map by actually getting promotion. But to be honest, they spent way too much on it. I mean, they're lucky there's no FFP in League One, because that would certainly be considered a violation on the 111 points. We know they won the league, by the way, if you didn't know about where you've been. I just thought that it was absolutely ridiculous that they were unable to get around the FFP so much by being in League One, because that created an unfair economic advantage. But I also thought the ownership were unfair. I thought, or clueless rather. So yeah, I'm going to not labour on the point of why I said that anyway. Great to see Birmingham back in the Championship, but they've certainly got them financial firepower, don't they? 16th, Wycombe Wanderers. What on earth am I saying? They're in 5th place. Oh, I thought it was one of them ones which was going to just steady the ship. Nothing really impressed me in pre-season. No good impressive signings. Alas, they did finish quite a lot better than I expected. And I feel like a mug for it. But I don't think many people would have had Wickham as being a playoff contender, maybe even an automatic promotion contender at one point on their cards at the start of the season. 15th place, Reading. They finished in 7th. I mean, it was a ridiculous thing that happened in the first. Somehow they managed to finish just outside the playoffs, despite the absolute ridiculousness of the circus that was going on at that club. They were on the brink of administration, with financial difficulties. They were under a transfer embargo, I'm pretty certain. And yeah, I mean, I thought mid-table was being on the generous side. I did not expect them to almost sneak into the playoffs. 14th, Mansfield Town. 17th in the end. Actually, I thought for a lot of the season they could have definitely done, but they had that bad slump at one point. But yeah, they definitely at some point looked quite positive and looked like they could have got that 14th place. So yeah, I feel a bit indifferent about this one because actually at the end of the day, it's not too much different. It is mid-table regardless. It just could have been better in my opinion. There was only 3 points difference though. 13th, Northampton Town. They finished in 19th. I thought they were going to be a bit more. I thought they were going to continue that solid mid-tableness, and maybe if they decided to stick around with John Brady, they could well have done, but they opted not to, and yeah, I thought he was actually quite a good manager, John Brady. So I do feel a bit bad for him in an extent. And I know they've had their issues this season, but yeah, it was one of them ones which I did not expect to see the Cobblers struggling with relegation, shall we say, 5 points off relegation zone. I thought they were going to be a bit more comfortable than that. 12th, Rotherham United. Now, they finished in 13th. And I'm going to say that is an absolute result for me. Because everybody would expect Rotherham United to get instantly promoted back because that's sort of what they've grown accustomed to. That was somewhat the model. They were a bit of a yo-yo club. But they had Steve Evans, not Paul Warne, which I think was a one thing fundamentally lacking. You looked at the team, it was just a standard League One team. It reeked of just League One quality. So yeah, I'm happy that I got Rotherham in mid-table. 11th, Stockport County actually finished in 3rd. Really quite great, to be honest. I still will concur with what I said, that they had a phenomenal season last season, winning the league, earning themselves the promotion, and then somehow the media completely ignored them and just focused on Wrexham. And see, Stockport did great again this season. They finished in 3rd, just a few points behind Wrexham. Again, completely ignored. And so yeah, I think if we see Stockport win the league next season, I will not be surprised because that feel-good factor around that club is absolutely sky high. But no one seems to be focusing on them. Maybe they will next season without really any big boys, so to speak. I mean, they do have Cardiff, but Cardiff are riddled with issues right now at that club. So yeah, there's no reason why they can't be really strong next season. 10th, Stevenage have actually finished in 14th. I think, yeah, their squad is mid-table. So yeah, it wasn't too different to sort of where I anticipated them to be in that mid-table position, and so I could have expected them to be slightly better. And at times they did look like they were going to finish in that 10th place. They just had a bit of a drop off at the end of the season. 9th, Wrexham. They actually finished in 2nd. I just thought this was going to be the time where it was a step too far and they just actually need to have a pause and a breather. Maybe that will happen in the Championship. At some point, Wrexham will have to reach their ceiling. So we'll see. 8th place, Huddersfield Town. They finished in 10th. I'd take this one because I didn't think they were going to get the playoffs. I thought they were going to miss out. And that is almost exactly what ended up happening. They had all the signings on paper and stuff, which said they should have finished in the playoffs. And then they had a bit of a rocky patch of form, which meant that they dropped down to 10th. Similar thing when it happened in my predictions, but it just dropped off down to 8th. There was just a few too many losses in that truly dreadful end of the season run, which saw the previous manager lose his job. 7th place, Leyton Orient. I got them almost dead on right. They finished in 6th. And I thought that they were going to do well. Lots of people would have thought this would have been an absolutely stupid prediction to make in such a strong League One. But like, I got proved right. Richie Wellens is a great manager. Has more than proven himself. And I thought it was going to be an improvement from last season, and it was. Last season they finished in 10th. This season they finished in the playoffs. They are a club going in completely the right direction, doing things completely the right way. I could not fault the London club in any way, shape, or form. So, 6th place, I had Peterborough. They actually finished in 18th. Now, someone needs to break down to me what happened with Peterborough, because they were in the playoffs last season, right? And all but confirmed promotion, and then they threw it away against Oxford. But I mean, I think it was one of the things that, well, I thought actually that they could have finished higher, but they lost a lot of their good players. And I think that might be part of the reason why we're looking at them in such a bad position, because they had the whole core of their squad sort of taken out of it then. And that's probably the reason why. 5th place, Wigan Athletic. They finished in 15th. When is Wigan going to be back to their best? Maybe that's going to be next season. Maybe it might be. Maybe it not. I don't know. But I think sometime soon we're going to have to see Wigan return to the heydays that they were in. But at the moment, the circus is still going on in that club, because somehow they are finishing in 15th place in League One. What on earth? 4th, Barnsley. But I mean, it was a rubbish appointing Darrell Clarke in the first place to Barnsley, right? That's why they finished in 12th. And why Conor Hourihane is now manager, I'm pretty certain. But yeah, absolutely dreadful season by Barnsley by their own standards. And again, another case of probably losing some of their better players. But realistically, Barnsley should not be that down in mid-table. They should be challenging for that playoff position, or maybe even automatic promotion. 3rd, Bolton Wanderers. I didn't think they were improved. They finished in 8th, by the way. I didn't think they had improved from last season, and actually that is proved. And I feel like Ian Evatt, I mean, everything about Bolton just smacks to me as cockiness. And I think this is a real humbler of an experience of them not reaching the playoffs this season, because they finished 3rd last season and they were like, we should have won the league or whatever. Like, you were not good enough to win the league. And this season sort of proved why, because I think if you would have got promoted, then actually I don't think you would have done as well, relatively speaking. 2nd place, Lincoln City. Another time I was backing the Imps to be a dark horse. They finished 11th. maybe it's about time that we start placing them a bit more mid-table, a bit more tampering of expectations. But no, I think Lincoln, as usual, quietly going about their business, quietly just sitting there. And for some reason, a similar team which I saw also mid-table is Blackpool, which I thought as they were going to win. But yeah, I just thought Neil Critchley would have done a good job. Well, he didn't. And then they brought in Steve Bruce, and I thought Steve Bruce were going to do a good job at the Seasiders, and then he didn't. So yeah, Blackpool at some point are going to have to get back to their very best. Now, whether Steve Bruce is the man for that job, I have no idea. I can't comment on that. But at some point they must do. But yeah, they never look like challenging the playoffs, even though finishing 9th. On to the championship. We're getting there. 24th Blackburn Rovers. Somehow they finished in 7th. I mean, now that John Eustace has come to Derby, and he made it very open and very obvious that he needed backing and he didn't get backing. But somehow they did still do well. So I think that's a full testament to how good John Eustace is. But yeah, I mean, we could well see Blackburn getting relegated next season. You know, they were poor the season before the one that we just had, the ones which I was... The season before these predictions, they were poor, and I didn't really expect to see any large-scale improvements. Actually, I thought it was going to be regressing. I thought it was a weak squad, but no, they've done a good job. So yeah, congratulations to Blackburn. We may pinch a lot of your players. 23rd QPR, they actually finished in 15th. Again, it was another thing. I did not know who Martí Cifuentes was, to be fair. And a lot of their recruitment was foreign-based. I mean, it was never going to get them any awards, but it managed just to keep them up in the league. So yeah, I mean, they were never one of the ones which were bad the season before. But no, they did improve this season. 22nd Stoke. That could have well happened. It was 18th. But looking at how close the table was at the last day, it went down to the last day. We were only 2 points away from relegation themselves. And I thought, you know what, Steven Schumacher's not the man. He was quite poor with Plymouth. And the managerial merry-go-round does go on because Steven Schumacher did get sacked by Stoke and ended up going to Bolton, actually. So yeah, it was there really is instability at the Potters right now. Where the future really lies, I'm not too sure, but it's really a turbulent club, really. And that's why I sort of predict them to be relegated. 21st Portsmouth, they finished in 16th. So, I mean, I must say, John Messino is absolutely growing on me by the season, to be honest. And I thought they would stay up. I thought that was where their aspirations was, and they did. They just did a bit better and finished in mid-table. So yeah, Pompey, they're on their teams. Home form, great. Away from home, rubbish. Right? So if they crack their away form, why not say that they go to playoffs? But if they continue their poor away form and then start seeping negativity into their home form, we could see relegation. That's how bad at the moment it seems to be in the Championship. 20th Oxford United, they finished in 17th. We take that. We take that, right? Like they're a team which I thought, you know what, a bit of a newbie on the block, so to speak. I haven't been in the Championship for a while. But yeah, they had a good, positive feeling about that squad, and that's why they stayed up. And obviously, there's a load of farce going around right now about not being able to fulfill next season. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that's hyperbole to apply pressure onto the council to actually get that new stadium all ticked off. But yeah, it's one of them ones which they do need a new stadium. I agree with the owner on that. 19th, Hull City. They finished in 21st. Roughly where I expected them. I don't know why they sat Liam Rosenior. And they did have a very unstable season, it must be said. But it was enough. It was 1 point off 19th in the end, where Derby actually finished. But no, this bit of instability, they managed to play just right this time. I'm not sure how lucky they'll be the second time round. We shall see. 18th, Sheffield Wednesday. They finished in 12th, which must be said. Danny Rowell is one of the greatest championship managers because Chas Neary is an absolute disgrace of a owner. I'm sure Wednesday Ocho, I don't think is watching anymore, but he can probably confirm for us all how much of a poor owner he is, currently not paying any wages and all of that. And Danny Rowell manages yet again to overperform on Wednesday. And they probably would have finished in 18th if they did not have Danny Rowell at the helm. And I think next season's going to be struggle. They're under a transfer embargo now. Probably a lot of players wanting to agitate for leaving the manager. He's probably wanting out as well. So, yeah, difficult. 17th, Sunderland. I did not expect them to get to the playoffs in 4th, and let alone getting promotion from. I thought, you know what? It's one of those things that I just thought it was a lot of their good transfers came on quite late on, actually. And let's say we didn't know much about Reggie Livery before. He got a win percentage of 30%. I just didn't think it was going to be much of an improvement, and we didn't have any huge names at that point at the time. We didn't know about Joe Bellingham coming in or about Enzo Lafay. We didn't know about these things. So they certainly improved because of that, and I still would say that Reggie Livery is going to be a huge risk going into the Premier League because he did so poorly in that end of the league season. And playoffs are a lottery, so that matters less. They've actually gotten promoted, but it now basically means that they're wedded to this man for at least half the season next time around. And that's going to be truly detrimental to them, in my opinion. 16th, Norwich City. They actually finished in 13th. Not too different. 3 points in total. I sort of thought, they're going to be roughly a mid-table team, which they were. And we can all agree that Johannes Hoffrup was one of them managers which should not have been appointed in the first place. I mean, it was a risk any day, to be honest. And they are now on a hunt for a new manager. Oh no, they're not. Sorry, they brought in Liam Manning now, haven't they? But yeah, I didn't think that Frup had it in him, to be honest, to finish much more than an abject mid-table finish. 15th, Bristol City. I'm really surprised they finished in the playoffs, and I think even Bristol City fans are, because they normally finish in mid-table. So 15th didn't seem totally absurd, but that's just the nature of a championship, isn't it? But they are naturally absurd. So yeah, well done. We'll get into the playoffs, but I think everybody there knows it's no achievement. 14th, Preston North End. They are normally a mid-table team. They finish in 20th. They could be in real danger next season. Their squad is stagnating. They really need a large rebuild, actually, at that place. And that includes up to and including the manager. Because Ryan Lowe was certainly not the man that I would have expected to lead this rebuild, and that's why they brought in Paul Heckingbottom. This fairly early on in the season, to be honest. I don't know if he's necessarily the man to lead that either. So yeah, weirdly enough, Ryan Lowe was still the manager when I made these predictions. Like, he was the first one to depart, very early on in the season, actually. And so yeah, Paul Heckingbottom should probably be sacked, potentially. I'm not sure. We'll see, but it was certainly hasn't done as well as he did at Sheffield United. But maybe if they build a team around him, they can improve next season. it remains to be seen. I mean, Preston have never been the team with the largest investor in the club. 13th, Middlesbrough, and they finished in 10th, which slightly less than I thought. I thought it was a just nearly manager, and each season they were slipping a bit further, and that's what's caused the straw which broke the camel's back this season, so to speak, with Michael Carrick being dismissed. I don't blame him in that regards, because they have been regressing every season. And that's what we saw again this season. They finished in 10th. Their team is definitely good enough to be in playoffs. But as I predicted, they finished roughly mid-table. 12th, Plymouth Argyle. That was a rubbish prediction. They finished in 23rd. But partly, it was even more absurd the fact they had Wayne Rooney in charge. Why I even suggested that is beyond me. So, yeah, that was me being stupendous. 11th, Swansea City. They finished in 11th, dead on the bullseye. Yeah, I think I agree with what they say. They show flashes but are inconsistent. And that really has been proven this season. They had some very great performances and great games, but just weren't consistent enough. Especially in front of goal. Especially in front of goal this season. They were probably towards relegation candidacy in terms of goals scored, but their defence did help them out quite a bit in that regards. 10th, Cardiff City. I mean, they shouldn't have got rid of Errol Blue. Well, I have no idea how you pronounce that guy's name. Still don't. But I thought they had some good signings being made and stuff, and I just thought it would be great. And then Errol Blue started poorly, and everything just fell off. They were in mid-table last season, but this season, well and truly relegated in last place in 44 points. And yeah, I mean, it's going to take a long time for Cardiff City to build back. They've got poor ownership for one, who have no idea what they're doing, have a very toxic relationship with the fans. Another one in cases that will probably end up getting stuck for a few years down in the Championship, coming to think about, not the Championship, in League One, coming to think about it. So yeah. 9th, West Bromwich Albion. They finished in 9th. Another one dead on the money. I always feel so happy getting one dead on in the Championship because it's such a hard league to predict. And I thought Carlos Corberán, great manager. He'll be able to challenge and rile up for the playoffs. Didn't quite get the playoffs as I sort of anticipated. That's partly because he went to Valencia for one. Just before Christmas, actually, on Christmas Eve. But yeah, that was about where I anticipated West Brom to be, just outside of playoffs. And that's where they were. So I'm happy with that one, even though for most of the season they were in the playoffs and probably could have done so if Corberan stuck around. First place was Leeds, but I actually predicted them to finish 8th. I thought a bit of a psychological toll may have had effect on the playoff finals, and maybe, well, let's be honest, I didn't want to see Leeds being promoted. That's one of the only reasons why, but that's a good enough reason as any, so to speak. 7th placed Watford, actually finished in 14th. That was such a poor season. I thought it was a blip. It wasn't a blip. It seems to have set in now. I mean, yeah, it's one of them ones that was Tom Cleverley the right appointment? No, and the carry on now with managerial merry-go-round, and it was always likely that it wasn't going to last the whole season. So yeah, he's now at Plymouth, Tom Cleverley, but Watford are now suddenly finding themselves without parachute payments, stuck in mid-table in the Championship. It's going to be a struggle for them to get back to them heights that they were in a few seasons back. 6th place, I had Millwall, actually finishing 8th. I mean, they appointed Neil Harris as manager, which was always likely to be a good fan favourite. And then he burned his bridges with the club. Like, I can't believe he said what he actually said. I mean, this man only has over 3 managerial gigs, I swear. Or like 2. He's been to Millwall a couple of times. He's been to Cambridge a couple of times. I think he also has like Gillingham as like one of his ones he regularly goes to as well. But he only ever goes to places he played for, it seems. It's a ridiculous one altogether. And he's back at Cambridge now. He probably shouldn't have ever come back to Millwall, so to speak. That's part. I think he said something about something negative towards the fans or something. I can't remember, but maybe if they stuck with him, they could have reached the playoffs. But alas, only a couple of points off it. And that just proves this season how close it's been, to be honest. And it is a bit disappointing, to be fair. I mentioned Japhet Tanganga at the start of the season as a youngster to keep your eye on, and have a rubbish release clause in his flipping thing. Like, it's such a cheap release clause, but only for Premier League teams, mind you. But you got to keep tie these players down. Crystal Palace was bound to come after them, surely. 5th place, Coventry City. They finished in 5th place. 3, I believe that is. Championship dead on predictions. And I was right. Dark horses for the playoffs. Well, it wasn't really dark horses, was it? Yeah, let's be honest. They were expected to reach the playoffs. But yeah, I think I backed Mark Robbins actually to be the man to take him there. Little did I realise it was going to be Frank Lampard come the end of this season, but you know what? Good on him. He's managed to get into the playoffs. Didn't manage to win the playoffs, of course, but I don't think anyone really expected him to. So yeah, well done, Coventry. Another successful season ticked off. 4th, Sheffield United. They actually finished 3rd. I mean, it was about where I expected them to be. I mean, part of the issue is a detracted ownership, and now who wouldn't back the club. But then, and Chris Wilder, though, has a really good affinity with the club. So I thought Chris Wilder will be able to get something out of it. Well, now sack Chris Wilder. Has anyone seen that? That's absolutely wild. I don't know if you excuse the pun. Why are they doing that? Like, I think he's arguably overachieved with Sheffield United this season to actually be in a automatic promotion race for a large proportion of the season. Any other season, 90 points would get you automatic promotion, by the way. So to dismiss Wilder as an absolute sham. And I personally think that Sheffield United would have been better to stick with him next season and probably would have been able to get promotion. I don't know about it now. They may still be able to because they do have a good squad. I just would have backed them more if... Oh, Chris Wilder is still technically at the club. I'm just seeing. I don't know. Has he officially been sacked yet? The same with Ruben Sellers is going to come in instead. That would be ridiculous. I'm just speaking my heart here, but yeah. 3rd place, Burnley actually finished in 2nd. Again, not too distant. It was always likely that Burnley were going to do well in this season, let's be honest. And they did. So not much to say here. Because obviously the bias in here was saying that Derby County were going to get promoted. You know, it was one of them mental ones that I'm always a bit mental with my predictions towards Derby. I always overrate them. But that's what you get from watching a Derby County supporter, you know. And we're going to reach for title next season. No, I'm joking. But I'm impressed. I liked what Derby did this season. Generally, very, very happy. We stayed up. That's what we needed to do at the end of the day. I would have liked to being a bit higher. Wouldn't have left it to the last day and all that. And probably should have brought in John Eustace a couple of games sooner. But, overall, I'm content with our season and looking forward to what the future holds. And we certainly have a platform to build on now. We have got a phenomenal defence. That must be said. We had a good defence in League One. We've had a good defence in the Championship. That is really where our attribute is. We just need to get some more goal scorers. First, Luton Town. That was an absolute ridiculous one. They got relegated. I mean, I don't think anyone predicted back-to-back relegations because I just thought, you know what, they're a team which parachute payments, they tend to have good transfers but bringing players on the cheap and stuff. But no. Anyway, the final one is the Premier League. Anyone could have told you that Ipswich would have been relegated. I had them in 20th, and they actually put on a bit more of a fight than I thought. But at the end of the day, they did finish in 19th. Like, they were always going to be relegated. It was going to be a rapid ascent and may equally be a rapid descent. I think they did go to the Premier League too early altogether. They did have some good players, though. Like let's not lie, Liam Delap, absolutely huge. Amari Hutchinson, like some good players out there. I don't know if they were necessarily going to be able to keep all of them, but it's certainly, if they keep hold of Kieran McKenna, I reckon decent season coming up next season. 19th, Leicester City, they finished in 18th, another team which I had predicted relegated. I thought it was inevitable, actually, that these two would be relegated. I mean, they lost Enzo Maresca. And who did they go and point? The flipping Rivals manager, Steve Cooper. Like, it doesn't work in the Premier League, and that's why they got rid of him. And then, not only do they go and get rid of him, they then go with a downgrade by getting Ruud van Nistelrooy, who was based on, 3 games as an interim manager? The absolute mental decisions made by Leicester this season. And it's an ageing squad. People like Vardy and stuff. You stop harping back to the past and actually get some good players for the future, to be honest. Because that's the issue with Leicester at the moment. 18th, Southampton, they actually finished in last place. I didn't realise how bad they were going to be. Crikey, they were woeful. But yeah, I think his style of play relies on heavy possession, and you're not going to get that in a relegation battle. You're just not, because you're just not ready for that sort of football. Maybe they got rid of Russell Martin a little bit too early, but at the same time, they should have got rid of him potentially. But then you think the person they brought in to replace him was equally as shocking. So swings around about. 17th, Brentford. They actually finished in 10th. I'm really impressed with them this season. I thought they were slowly going backwards. But yeah, I thought they were going to just about stay up. But no, Brentford yet again shining their quality and doubts on all of us through. 16th, West Ham United. They finished in 14th by 1. So 1 point difference, really. It wasn't too different. I wasn't that convinced on Lopetegui as an appointment, and clearly nobody else was, as he is now no longer at the club. Now, to be fair, I think it was, the dismissal of him was probably a bit more unfair, because now they've brought in Graham Potter, who I don't think has made a blind bit of difference. I rate him as a manager. I think he will do good with West Ham in the future, but he's got to have the support around him, But yeah, I'm not upset about that. That's about where I expected West Ham to be in that mid-table battle. 15th, Nottingham Forest. We're not going to talk about Forest. We're moving quickly on. They got European football, but it wasn't the Champions League because they suck, because they bottled it. Take that, you little tree shaggers. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously all bants, but we don't like Forest on this channel, and if you do, then tough on you. You clearly don't know the rivalry of football. 14th, Fulham, and they finished in 11th. Okay, not too bad. I mean, I thought they were going to be mid-table. They were mid-table. They had some good players, and they were roughly where I didn't expect them to be as high as 11th, to be honest, but I did expect them to be in mid-table, 13th, Crystal Palace. They finished in 12th. It was so obvious that they were going to be in a mid-table finish. I did not expect them to win the FA Cup, so that is something which must be stated as a positive. But we've got such a good squad, and I do hope, I must place on record here, that this whole situation with them not being allowed in Europe, absolutely ridiculous. Like, how can they have won an FA Cup and not be allowed in Europe, yet somebody who finished 6th in the table or something like that does get allowed into the Europa League? Like, it's the same with the Conference League with Drogheda and Silkeborg, with Drogheda being kicked out, having they won the FAI Cup. Like, multiple ownerships are well common. Like, you got Man City have as a load of players in the City groups, notably Girona, Red Bull Salzburg, and Red Bull Leipzig. It's literally in the name. That these are just a couple of examples I can think of off at the top of my head. I know there's a few others out there as well. Chelsea, I think, has got a multiple ownership with another one. But they're all still somehow allowed to compete in the same competition. So, because of a blind trust, Nottingham Forest actually and Olympiacos. There you go. They're owned by the same. But because they've been put in a blind trust, because they knew, like, the deadline was like March. That's the 5th round of the FA Cup. At what point in the 5th round of the FA Cup does anyone actually seriously suspect that Crystal Palace would have won it? Put your hand up if you say so. Like, the deadline for that should be, in my opinion, end of May. Right? End of May. Simple as. Would have solved so many issues, and there wouldn't be this legal shenanigans. It's only 25% of the club anyway. It's not even like he's got the majority shareholdings. Anyway, moving on to that. Oh no, not again. Oh no. Oh no. Right, we're going to have to do this again because there's so many issues. We're back. Oh, so bad today. So many bad connection issues today. Right, we're back. I believe I was talking about Crystal Palace. We do hate Forest. Martin Ryan, thank you for coming along and liking the video. You are Playside Everton. I'm pretty certain I've talked about Crystal Palace. I'll need to see at the end. There may be some lag. I'm not sure. But yeah, 12 Playside Everton. Everton actually finished in 13th. You know what? We take that. And I mean, a lot of people thought that the Toffees were going to be relegated. I did not, because you looked at them; they were a mid-table team without the points deduction, and they were again. I mean, Sean Dyche didn't last the whole season. It was David Moyes, which is the reason why they did as well. They did, but it was still a good enough season for Everton, and I think that's another great prediction. 11th place, Chelsea. This wasn't meant to win. They did finish in 4th in the end. But, I mean, they're a team which are in the making still, I think. But they certainly overachieved from what I was expecting, because I thought they were going to be one of them ones which there's some interesting signings, and we're all quite young signings as well. And I thought the signing, I just thought it was going to be a bit of youthful inexperience. So yeah, 10th place had Brighton. They finished in 8th. Okay, that's not too bad. They do just seem to be on that cusp of Europe, don't they? Because they're actually finishing just outside the European positions again this season. So So yeah, they're really one of them teams which just always finish just outside that European position. But it is, I mean, from where Brighton were traditionally was as a club, that is an overachievement, and they're probably loving each moment at the moment, being on that just outside of Europe positions. Ninth, Wolverhampton Wanderers. Nope, that was 16th. So, I mean, I thought they had some decent. They had a decent team last season, and they had done this season actually. There was a really good spell with what was his name, Vitor Pereira, as manager. He did a really good job, and actually, I think that must be highly commended to him because I didn't know who he was coming in. Yet somehow he's managed to get a 48% win percentage, and yeah, they're certainly a team which I think I would. If he had a full season, you would have to say that there was a possibility that Wolves could well have finished in the top half. I don't think ninth was ever really a possibility now in hindsight, but they were a decent team, Eighth, Liverpool. Okay, they were actually title winners. I mean, we didn't really know much about it, about Arne Slot, because Klopp had left. And you look at Arne Slot, there wasn't really much of a good history around Dutch managers at that point. Erik ten Hag had done a rubbish job. Louis van Gaal was a bit meh. Like the Dutch football never really transferred into the English football, but actually, slotted right in and did a very decent job. I mean, admittedly, he was left with a very strong team, but I did not expect them to win the league. So yeah, certainly deserve all the plaudits. Seventh, Aston Villa. They finished in sixth. That was about right, so to speak. I didn't think they were going to quite replicate a Champions League finish. Slightly worse, and it was. They finished slightly worse, but they managed to get Europa League this time around. But actually, I think Europa League will be good for Villa because that probably means that they'll be able to win the Europa League. I'm hesitant in saying that, but I think it is definitely a possibility, especially with Unai Emery at the club. Sixth, Bournemouth. Was a mental call. They finished in ninth, right? And for a large part of the season, actually, Bournemouth were in the European positions. They were in the top six, and then they just slightly slid off at the end. So maybe not as big of a call. You know what? Fifth place is Manchester United. And eighth, I thought, was an underperformance. Turned out to be even worse. Because somehow they've gone and disastrous. There's no other ways to describe a 15th place finish from Manchester United. How can you possibly put into words two awful managers in the space of one season and looking almost relegation candidates for Manchester United? A leaky Old Trafford, like everything about this club, is just falling to absolute pieces right now. Fourth, Newcastle United, they finished fifth. We take that. Yeah, we knew it was going to take some time to be competitive, but I think fourth was a fair finish, and I think if they had actually decided to win their last game of the last couple of games of the season, and they would have been fourth. They had a good season, the Geordies, as anybody who is now where I'm living would attest. I think everybody around in Matoonland is extremely happy with that. Third, Tottenham. How come when I predicted Tottenham to finish in relegation zone, every single person laughed at me? And then when I predicted Tottenham to finish third, they end up literally just above the relegation zone. Now, yeah, they won the Europa League. But so what? It's absolutely ridiculous the fact that Tottenham... So Tottenham could have got Champions League by winning the Europa League, but instead by getting third, but instead they did it by winning the Europa League. I still see no difference. No, I'm joking. But it is absolutely horrendous. They need... Ange had to go. Like, I don't know what to do with Tottenham. Like, what words cannot express how this club can even start to improve. Spursy is a word for a reason. Second, Arsenal. Yeah, they finished in second. They are just the nearly men, aren't they? That they really are the nearly men. They just can't get that title. And of course, I mean, it seemed a boring saying that Manchester City were going to win the league, but they actually finished third, and they were actually at one point the joke finishing like looking in sixth place and stuff, and Pep scratching his face and whatever. It was all just a bit of a mess, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, hopefully that's all me done. That's 2.5 hours of glorious footage. We'll be doing my managerial sackings probably in the video, potentially not. There'll be my predictions coming out. But thank you for watching. I will endeavour to edit this to make sure that it's less clunky. But I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.